Right, thanks very much for inviting me here today. Yes, my name's Ritchie. I'm from the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, AREMI, and I'm here to talk today about our iteration, or our version of the National Map, which is the Australian Renewable Energy Mapping Infrastructure, or AREMI project. I'm just going to give a bit of a brief overview about what we do at AREMI and who we are, and then talk about the AREMI project, and then I'll go through a bit of a demonstration, a live demonstration of the map, and then talk about some future direction. So first of all, just about AREMI. We were established in 2012 with the dual purpose of improving the competitiveness and increasing the supply of renewable energy in Australia. We have an independent, commercially oriented board that works towards the AREMI Act that was legislated in 2012. The agency has about $2.5 billion in funding, and that goes out to 2022. And to date, we've committed about $1.1 billion of funding, supported around 230 projects related to renewable energy, of which 41 have been completed. In terms of where we fund, we have a fairly broad mandate and a fairly broad remit in terms of the type of projects that we can fund. So our funding goes from early stage research and development right through to pre-commercial deployment. So we have a fairly flexible and expansive mandate that allows us to fund renewable energy deployment projects, as well as projects like AREMI that are sort of developing information analytical tools that can actually help the renewable energy industry. Beyond the sort of pre-commercial deployment, that's where agencies like the Clean Energy Finance Corporation or programs like the Emissions Reduction Fund sort of come in. Now, in terms of the AREMI project, the AREMI project has been allocated around $2.1 million of AREMI funding, and the primary development period for the project, of which we are in at the moment, is going from August 2014 to July 2016. And then after July 2016, we're going to enter the formal hosting period. So AREMI has actually allocated funding for hosting of the website out to June 2019. We saw this as very important to provide a level of surety that the actual website would be hosted over a period of time. The software and website development is being undertaken by Data61, unsurprisingly, and the website is going to be hosted by Geoscience Australia. So all nice synergies there with the National Map project. In terms of some of the motivations for the AREMI project, I want to sort of talk about these in terms of what our original motivations were when we signed the contract, and then how those motivations were basically added to following the consultation and early development work that NICTA undertook. So originally the motivation really was to consolidate dispersed geospatial data sets relating to renewable energy resources and related infrastructure, and to provide a portal to host ARENA-funded mapping projects. We have historically funded a few mapping projects, and oftentimes because the proponent doesn't have the finances to actually host them, they sort of fall away into the ether. And so we wanted to provide a portal to do that. And by doing so, we thought we'd be able to reduce the time that would be required for potential renewable energy project developers to get an idea about a potential site, a potential renewable energy opportunity, and also use the portal to facilitate the sharing of knowledge that is gained from ARENA-funded projects. So basically providing another portal to facilitate ARENA knowledge sharing. However, following NICTA's early consultation and development work, we actually added to these motivations because we've got a bit of an understanding about what value the private sector might derive from AREMI. And the first of those motivations was it could better inform energy infrastructure investment decisions by providing data that would allow for a more productive and economic efficient decision to be made around energy infrastructure. We also wanted to promote opportunities for investment in renewable energy by obviously highlighting the resources and infrastructure that are available, and create opportunities for the development of value-adding analytical services. AREMI is great for viewing the data and providing a portal to access the data, but the real value from it comes when a user is able to take that data, do a bit of analysis of it, and actually do a bit of value-add in that regard. I'll talk a bit more about these through the demonstration, but overall, really, and through the AREMI project, we wanted to be able to promote the benefits of open data and mapping, and obviously fit in with the broader agenda that the Department of Communications and PM&C were working towards. So this is the website, nationalmap.gov.au/renewables. So obviously linking back to the national map, and if I can just get the mouse to pop up, there we are. We'll see where we go in terms of doing a demonstration. So this is a screen that basically greets users when they click on and they get to the AREMI website. We do have a disclaimer because the portal is going to be used by people from within the private sector. We need them to have an understanding that this portal is about viewing data. It's not about allowing them to make a final investment decision based on the data. So they need to obviously be aware of the limitations of the data. So we do have this disclaimer in there. So very important. This is the base map that is opened up when users come to AREMI. They do obviously have all the other base maps that the other viewers do as well, but this one is quite good for actually viewing a lot of the data sets. So the two, I suppose, categories of data that distinguish AREMI from the other iterations of NationalMap are this electricity infrastructure and renewable energy categories. So within our electricity infrastructure, we have generation, transmission, and a ARENA-funded project here, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I just want to go to generation first. And with generation, through a really good relationship with the Australian energy market operator, AEMO, we've been able to actually source data, live power generation data from the Australian energy market operator. So if I sort of go here, we actually load up all of the power stations in the national electricity market. And I can sort of zoom in here, and we always like to focus on this power station here. I don't know if anybody knows why, but this power station here is Nyngan Solar Plant. This is an ARENA-funded project, and it's actually the largest solar power station in the Southern Hemisphere. And so through the AEMO data set, we can actually identify and some basic information. What's really quite interesting and quite good is when we scroll down to the bottom, we can actually get a data here about the last 24 hours of energy production from the Nyngan solar plant. So you can sort of see that yesterday it was quite a clear and sunny day in Nyngan, so they're able to reach their maximum capacity during the middle of the day and hold it there. And then obviously the sun went down and there was no generation overnight. And at present they're sort of just ramping themselves up to full capacity as the solar radiation sort of gears up towards this maximum level for the day. So that's obviously quite good, and users obviously who are keen to know a bit more about the data can download it and analyse it as well. In terms of infrastructure, another great benefit of the project that we've been able to, is that we've been able to unlock previously, previous data sets and previous information that was not publicly available. So the first of those, which I'll talk about, is transmission lines within the national electricity market. Now, transmission lines are a data set that historically has been seen as highly confidential and secure, but because of things like Google Maps and a security assessment that Geoscience Australia work with Asia, when we've been able to publish information on transmission lines. You can sort of see here on the East Coast National Electricity Market, the Southwest Interconnected System in Perth, and the Northwest Interconnected System here up around Port Hedland and Karratha. So again, I can sort of zoom in on a transmission line. I can click on the line and it comes up with basic information there about it. Its location, where it's going to, the capacity in kilovolts, and obviously some other information as well, which has been quite good. And then obviously in terms of the additional infrastructure information, another great benefit is that for the first time we've also been able to publish distribution substations in Australia as well. So again, a user can come to the site and click on a distribution substation, know where it is, barcode it, and then get a bit of an understanding about the capacity as well. So the ability to actually make that sort of infrastructure information available for the first time has been quite groundbreaking and has been a real benefit of this project. I mentioned earlier around this network opportunities map that has been undertaken by the University of Technology, Sydney, particularly the Institute of Sustainable Futures, otherwise known as ISF. There's no data set because the data for this is actually obtained from the network service providers, so the companies that actually own and operate the electricity grid, but they actually are required under legislation to produce this data. So what this map is showing you here at the moment is actually quite good. It's a map of what we're calling available capacity or capacity constraints. So in various areas of the national electricity market, there's always a balance between the demand for electricity and the ability of the energy supply infrastructure to actually meet that demand. And so where there's an issue, where there's a location where there's more demand than there is the physical capacity to supply that demand, that gives rise to what we call a constraint within the electricity market. Now, those constraints have historically been remedied by making augmentations to the existing electricity infrastructure. Now, those network augmentations actually put upward pressure on electricity prices, and obviously that is what we've seen in the last couple of years with investment in network infrastructure. There's actually been quite a substantial rise in electricity prices. An alternative to augmenting the network is actually to invest in distributed generation, and renewable energy is one such form of distributed generation that users might want to consider. And so this actually allows users to identify a potential location where renewable energy could make a quite attractive economic case. So I'll just zoom in on an area here around Victoria, and you can see here that obviously areas that are green or yellow is where there's really no capacity constraint, but areas that are red is where there is a capacity constraint. And if I click here on Eaglehawk in Victoria, we can see that the actual available capacity here is quite less than the demand. So there is quite a substantial constraint in this area. And obviously there's a potential for renewable energy investment there. And because this information has been reported by the networks, we have a fair degree of granularity in terms of the data that we have, and it's obviously quite good. And again, users can download it and obviously do their own analysis on it as well. Just in terms of the renewable energy resource information that we have, with these categories are ones that we are continuing to sort of work through to get the data, particularly the wind data. What I will just highlight at the moment is the solar data. Solar is obviously a very important renewable energy resource in Australia, and I've just highlighted here our direct normal exposure, and you can sort of see here again, users can click on that and get an understanding of the direct normal exposure in certain areas of Australia, and to obviously gauge the potential for that area to be used for solar energy generation or solar projects. I mentioned earlier about one of the motivations about the AREMI project is that it's able to, I suppose, allow users to identify opportunities for investment in renewable energy. I just want to talk you through quickly about how that works. So, for example, a potential investor or a potential project developer can come to AREMI and they can say, okay, well, I want to know where there's an opportunity or where there might be some good opportunities for renewable energy investment. What will they do? Well, they'll come in here and they'll say, well, where are their constraints with the national electricity market? And they'll come to this map again, and then they might go down again to Victoria, and they'll come to Eaglehawk, and they'll click on there and they'll say, okay, there's a fairly substantial constraint in that area. There's obviously a potential for renewable energy to be applied there. But hold on a minute, what's the infrastructure like in that area? Well, they'll get out of that one there, and then they can go to transmission. They can look at the transmission lines. So Eaglehawk is around Bendigo, and they can see here in the middle that, okay, yes, there's plenty of transmission lines in that area. I'll be able to potentially connect up a renewable energy plant to the grid. But what about the substations we'll actually need to connect? Well, again, as you sort of saw there briefly for a second, there are some substations in around the Bendigo area, so they will be able to connect there. So they're again that sort of picture about where there's an opportunity and what the existing infrastructure is in that area. And then they can obviously then go to the renewable energy resources and say, well, what sort of renewable energy project might make sense in that area? And let's just go back to solar, and they'll click on normal exposure here. And again, they get an understanding that around that Bendigo area there in the middle, solar resources are okay. They're better than they are in Melbourne. They're certainly not as good as they are in the middle of Australia and Alice Springs. But there's obviously the potential there to develop a renewable energy project. And so by being able to actually hone in on a location, access infrastructure and resource data, and then potentially take that data and do some analysis, you're hopefully going to be able to drive investment and better inform investment in renewable energy by cutting down on the time that is required for people actually to identify a prospective site. So that's really one of the key benefits that we see, I suppose, from the AREMI project, and I suppose multiple users get benefits from it. I'll just come back quickly now to talk about some of the future directions and next steps. Obviously, if people are interested, I could talk about AREMI for a lot longer. I don't have that today, unfortunately, but if people had interest, as with all the other instances of the national map, it's very intuitive and very easy to understand and to use, so feel free to go in there and have a look and have a bit of a play around. In terms of the future directions and next steps, towards the end of this primary development tranche, we are looking to include additional data sets. NICTA is in the process of getting wind speed data out of a commercial provider, DNVGL, and hopefully we're also going to start a trial mapping of industrial energy use. So the Clean Energy Regulator, through their National Greenhouse Energy Reporting Scheme, actually captures the energy use by fuel type of some of Australia's largest organisations and largest companies. What we want to be able to do is to actually take that data, aggregate it up to a reasonable level, and then be able to put that on the map. That'll be quite unique if we're able to do that, and we're working through CER to have that happen. We're also looking to include other ARENA-funded mapping projects on the map, in particular the CSIRO Wave Energy Atlas and some solar mapping projects, so it will again increase the amount of resource information that we have, and also looking to include more detailed cadastral information, including more information about land tenure and other things like that, to again give users an understanding about, well, they've identified a potential site where a renewable energy project could be, what's the actual land issues there, what's the geography, topography, all of that's actually leveraged already off the national map, but this again just goes down to that further level of granularity. In terms of some of the future directions, and I wouldn't necessarily say these are set in stone, ARENA's still, I suppose, getting its head around what the technology can do. We don't come from a strong data background ourselves within the organisation, and I think we're just trying to figure out, one, what the power of the actual platform is that we're working with here at the moment, and what could be possible in the future. One of the things we are looking to do is to increase the use of mapping tools to provide more energy resource infrastructure data. A lot of the network service providers actually provide a lot of data and information already, and that's sort of locked away in the back of PDFs and other fairly non-public friendly resources and documents. And so we're looking to sort of see if we can unlock some of that and maybe put into the mapping infrastructure. And the outcomes of that is potentially of value, because by having greater access to data around energy resources and infrastructure, we believe we might actually be able to drive some good progress in energy market reform by better being able to inform decisions. We also obviously want to see more open data and analysis, particularly, there's a lot of confidentiality concerns with energy data. Some of that is perceived and some of that is real. I think it's really about breaking down those perceptions and being able to show that there is actually some market benefit from making this data available. And one other thing that I suppose this is, again, very much an idea in its infancy, is about this development of plug-and-play analysis. So I sort of talked there about the idea of evaluating analysis and that being a key motivation for the project. The idea there is that a potential user could actually come to AREMI and they could maybe go to a certain site, say a remote town, and they could maybe do a bit of analysis to look at, well, what am I currently paying for electricity in this area? What could I pay if I was to build a solar PV plant? You could get the resource information, you get the infrastructure information, you could sort of determine how much, get estimates of costs and that kind of thing, and do this sort of value-adding analysis and do these sort of plug-and-play analyses that can actually allow for better informed decisions in relation to energy supply and energy infrastructure. So if anybody had any questions, I'm here today, and also the project manager is Shelley from NICTA, and I think a few other guys, Mats and Alex, are here as well as Bill, who obviously has been working quite closely with the project. But that's all I had for today.
Thank you.
No worries.